The galaxy had been burning for many years, and everyone had forgotten what peace felt like. Worlds were divided, armies marched, and old hatreds grew stronger with every battle. Humans and the Zereth Empire had fought so long that no one remembered how it started. But on a lonely, broken moon far from any major planet, a story began that neither side expected. Sergeant Daniel Ward, a human warrior known for his calm strength, walked through the ruins of an old military outpost. He had been searching for survivors from a crashed ship. Smoke still rose into the thin air, and broken metal covered the ground like fallen bones. Daniel moved slowly, silently, his rifle held close, his eyes sharp. He expected rebels or dangerous creatures to jump out at any moment, but instead, he found something else, something completely unexpected. Under a half-collapsed metal panel, a faint sound reached his ears. A soft breath. A whisper of pain. Daniel froze and listened again. Then he lifted the heavy piece of metal, using all his strength, and there she was, a young alien woman, her skin a soft silver blue, her hair shining like strands of white light. Her eyes, though tired and full of fear, shone bright violet. She lay curled up, shaking, bruised, and barely conscious. Her long robes were torn, and a symbol on her chest glowed weakly. It was the royal crest of the Zereth Empire. Daniel's heart tightened. A princess. An enemy princess. But he didn't aim his rifle. He didn't step back. Instead, he knelt beside her. Her lips moved. "Please, don't hurt me." Her voice was soft, trembling like a child's. Daniel spoke gently. "Easy. I'm not here to hurt you." She blinked, confused. "Human? Soldier?" "Yes," Daniel answered. "And you're injured. Don't move." She tried to push herself away, fear shaping her face. "Your people. Kill us on sight." Daniel shook his head. "Not today. Not me." The princess, though he didn't know her name yet, looked at him as if he had spoken a strange language. She had grown up hearing that humans were violent, heartless warriors. But this man had lowered his weapon. His voice carried no anger, only concern. Daniel slowly took off his tactical jacket and wrapped it around her body. She flinched once, expecting pain, but his touch was gentle. "What's your name?" he asked. She swallowed weakly. "Lyra. Princess Lyra." Her title didn't intimidate Daniel. He simply nodded. "All right, Lyra, you're safe now. I'm going to get you out of here." She stared at him, shocked. "Why? Help me." Daniel looked around the ruins, at the smoke and the wreckage. "Because you're hurt. Because you need someone. And because someone has to do the right thing." Lyra didn't understand his words, not fully. In her empire, kindness always came with a price. No one helped unless they wanted something in return. But this human warrior seemed different, simple, honest, and strange in a way she could not explain. Then a loud explosion shook the ground. Daniel turned sharply. Rebel fighters, a rogue Zereth faction that had kidnapped the princess, were still searching for her. If they found her again, they would take her or kill her. Daniel lifted Lyra carefully into his arms. She was light, like carrying a bundle of soft cloth, but her trembling made her feel fragile. She gasped in pain, and he whispered, "I've got you. Just hold on." She rested her head against his chest, listening to the strong beat of his heart. It was steady, brave, unafraid. Daniel moved quickly, stepping over debris, avoiding open areas. Every few steps, he glanced down at her to make sure she was still breathing. His own leg was bleeding from earlier, but he ignored the pain. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. "Why risk yourself?" she asked, her voice weak. Daniel didn't stop moving. "Because I made a promise to myself a long time ago. I protect anyone who needs help, no matter who they are." She stared at him again, deeply this time. She felt something new, something warm. A strange trust. They reached an old bunker hidden under rocks. Daniel kicked the door open gently and carried her inside. It was dark and cold, but safe enough for now. He laid her down carefully on a dusty bed and checked her wounds. Lyra whispered, "Humans are not what I thought." Daniel smiled faintly. "And maybe aliens aren't what we thought either." She closed her eyes, not out of fear this time, but out of relief. Daniel sat beside her, rifle ready, guarding her like a silent wall. He didn't know it yet, but this simple act, saving an alien princess, would change two worlds forever. Morning came slowly over the ruined moon, painting the sky in dull shades of red and gray. Inside the small bunker, the silence was broken only by the faint sounds of Lyra's breathing and the occasional drip of water from the cracked ceiling. She had slept through most of the night, exhausted from the crash and her long captivity. Daniel stayed awake, sitting beside her on the cold floor. His rifle leaned against the wall, and his eyes scanned every shadow. He didn't move. He couldn't afford to. When Lyra finally opened her eyes, she blinked against the dim light. Her violet gaze met Daniel's steady brown eyes. She noticed the fresh scratches on his face and the blood seeping through his bandages. You are hurt," she whispered, worry threading through her voice. "I'm fine," he said, brushing off her concern. "Wounds heal, people. Don't always." Her eyes widened. "You are human. Yet you care for me, an alien your enemy?" Daniel shrugged. "Not an enemy. Just someone who needs help." The words made her chest tighten. She had been taught to trust no human, to see them as killers. And yet, this one had carried her across a battlefield, risking his life for her. The thought made her stomach twist in ways she had never expected. Daniel stood up and walked to the small supply shelf. "You need to eat. You have to regain strength." He handed her a ration bar. She hesitated, her fingers trembling. I don't know how," she said softly. He smiled gently. "It's simple. Take a bite. Small, then another. You'll be stronger." She obeyed, nibbling slowly. He watched her carefully, as if guarding a treasure more valuable than any weapon in the galaxy. For the first time in days, Lyra felt safe. The fear that had never left her since her capture began to fade, replaced by something strange. Trust. Hours passed, and the distant sounds of war reminded them that danger was never far. "We have to leave," Daniel said finally, his voice firm. "They'll keep looking for you. The rebels, and maybe even my own people. We need to get you to the border of your empire. There, the loyalists will protect you." Lyra's breath caught. "You would carry me through all that danger? You risk your life again?" He nodded. "I promised myself I'd protect you. I keep my promises." She looked at him silently. The human was not just brave. He was reckless. And yet, she felt a strange warmth at the thought that someone could care so much about her life. "You are different from every human I have ever known," she said softly. Daniel chuckled lightly. "And you're different from anyone I've ever met." A long pause followed, filled only by the hum of the wind outside. Then, as if remembering the world outside the bunker, Lyra asked, "Will it hurt?" Daniel frowned. "The journey? Yes, there will be danger. You may be scared. I may be injured. But we'll survive, together." Her heart thumped painfully. She had never heard words like these, never felt someone's care so deeply. Slowly she nodded. Then, "I will trust you." Daniel knelt beside her, adjusting her weight so she could sit more comfortably. "Good, that's all I need. Trust. Everything else we can handle." Even in the quiet, their small smiles shared a connection neither could explain. Two beings from worlds at war, bound by fate in a single promise. Daniel studied her face. "You must know. If we are caught, it won't just be the rebels. Humans don't forgive easily, and your people might think I harmed you." She tilted her head, violet eyes searching his. "Even then, you would not abandon me?" "Never," he said simply. The truth of it struck her deeply. She had been taught that loyalty was for the strong, that trust was a weakness. And yet, here was a human tired and wounded, offering both. She felt something bloom in her chest, fear mixed with hope, despair mixed with courage. They prepared quietly. Daniel gathered supplies, checking his weapon, bandaging his wounds, and making sure Lyra was as ready as possible. Each movement was careful, deliberate, showing a patience that surprised her. She noticed the way he watched her, always alert, always protective. It made her feel safe in a way she had never known. Before stepping out of the bunker, Daniel offered his hand. "Ready?" Lyra took it, feeling the strength in his grip, the promise in his eyes. "Ready," she whispered. And together, they left the ruins. Stepping into a world still burning with war, each step taking them closer to danger. And closer to a destiny neither had imagined. The journey had begun. The journey from the ruined bunker was harder than Lyra had imagined. The land was a scarred wasteland, filled with twisted metal, craters, and the shadows of buildings that had long since fallen. Every step reminded them of the war that had consumed so many worlds. Yet Daniel moved with determination, carrying Lyra carefully, his strength and endurance unmatched. "Why are you doing this?" Lyra asked quietly as they crossed a broken bridge over a deep ravine. "You could leave me. You could let the humans take me. Or the rebels. You would survive. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He focused on each step, making sure her weight didn't strain him too much. Then he said, because it's the right thing to do. No one should be left behind. Not anyone. She studied him silently. She had grown up surrounded by power, loyalty, and fear. Leaders were supposed to command, not protect. Soldiers were supposed to fight, not carry wounded enemies across battlefields. And yet, here he was a human who risked everything for her. The feeling of trust she had begun to build grew stronger. Hours passed. Dust storms whipped around them, and jagged rocks tore at Daniel's clothes and skin. Lyra held on tightly, her own fear mixing with admiration. At one point, he stumbled over a jagged stone, nearly falling. She panicked. Daniel, be careful. I'm fine, he said with a strained smile, gripping the edge of the cliff. But she could see the pain in his eyes. He was tired. His body was battered. Yet he did not stop. That night, they found shelter in a collapsed mining facility. Daniel tended to Lyra's wounds first, cleaning scratches and bruises that had worsened from the journey. Then, though he had no energy left, he applied a bandage to his own bleeding arm. Lyra tried to protest. You can't keep doing this to yourself, she said, her violet eyes wide with worry. I can, he said simply. We need to keep moving. The rebels will not wait for us to rest. She looked at him and saw the exhaustion written in every line of his face. Yet his determination never wavered. She realized that courage wasn't just about fighting. It was about protecting someone else when it was easier to run. As the night deepened, they huddled together in the shadows. Lyra's hand brushed Daniel's, and she froze. He looked at her and gave a small, reassuring nod. It's okay, he said softly. We're stronger together. Her chest tightened. She had never felt this closeness with anyone alien or human. Her people believed that feelings were a weakness, that trust could be a weapon against you. And yet, she felt safe, even comforted. Somehow, she knew that Daniel's presence was more powerful than any weapon. The next day brought more danger. From the ridge above, they spotted rebel fighters searching for the princes. Lyra's breath caught. They are here, she whispered. Daniel assessed the situation quickly. Stay low, he ordered. We'll move through the valley. It's risky, but it's our only chance. Lyra nodded, gripping his jacket. Every step through the valley was tense. Rocks shifted under their weight, and every sound seemed louder than it should have been. Daniel led, scanning for danger with a sharp eye. When a rebel drone appeared, he acted without hesitation, pulling Lyra behind a fallen wall and returning fire with precise, controlled shots. She watched him, amazed and terrified. You never stop, she said in disbelief. He paused for a second, panting. I won't, not until you are safe. The day passed slowly. Every mile forward was a battle, not just against the enemies outside, but against fear and exhaustion inside. Lyra began to understand the depth of his bravery. He wasn't a soldier because he liked fighting. He was a warrior because he refused to let anyone else suffer while he could act. By evening, they reached a small grove of alien trees that offered shelter. Lyra looked at Daniel, her voice soft. You carry more than just me. You carry hope. Even when you are hurt, you do not give up. Daniel smiled faintly. Hope is worth fighting for. And you are worth it. Her heart skipped. She realized in that moment that this human had given her more than protection. He had given her trust, care, and a courage she never thought she could feel. And though the journey ahead was still dangerous, she knew they could face it together. As the stars appeared in the darkening sky, they rested briefly, side by side. Two different worlds, bound by a single promise: survival, trust, and the courage to keep going. The road ahead was long, but neither of them doubted that together they could reach it, no matter what waited beyond the horizon. The journey grew harder with every passing day. The terrain was unforgiving: jagged rocks, deep ravines, and burned-out forests stretched as far as the eye could see. Daniel carried Lyra whenever the path became too rough for her weak legs. Each step weighed on him, his injuries worsening, yet he never let her see his pain. Lyra studied him as they walked. Your body, it must hurt. Why do you keep going? She asked quietly. He glanced at her, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. Because I promised. I will not leave you behind. You need me, and I need to see you safe. Her violet eyes softened. She had never heard anyone speak like that, not in the courts of her empire, not in the presence of soldiers or advisors. Humans were supposed to be selfish, cruel, or careless. Yet this one soldier carried her through the wasteland without complaint. They moved through a valley scarred by battle. Smoke still rose from old craters, and the smell of burned metal hung in the air. Suddenly, a rebel patrol appeared on the ridge above. Lyra froze in Daniel's arms. "They found us," she whispered, fear catching her voice. Daniel's grip tightened around her. "Stay behind me," he ordered. "We can get past them, but we need to move quietly." They crept through the shadows, hiding behind rocks and fallen trees. One wrong step, one careless sound, and the rebels would spot them. Daniel's senses were razor-sharp. He paused, listening, watching every movement. When the patrol passed just meters away, he exhaled silently. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as she realized how close they had come to death. That night, they found a small cave to rest. Daniel set down his pack and helped Lyra lie on a soft patch of moss. "You need rest," he said, his voice gentle. I don't want to slow you down," she murmured. "You're not slowing me down," he replied. "We are moving together. That's what matters." Lyra felt warmth in her chest she had never felt before. Someone truly cared for her, not for her title, not for her empire, but for her life. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat echoing his bravery. The next morning brought a new challenge, a dried riverbed filled with jagged stones and steep slopes. Daniel helped Lyra down each slope, supporting her weight with unwavering strength. Halfway across, she slipped, and he caught her just in time, his body scraping against rocks. She clung to him, shaking. "You always save me," she whispered. "Even when it's dangerous." "I'll always save you," he said simply. "No matter what." Hours later, as the sun dipped low in the sky, they reached an old bridge. It was unstable, cracked in many places. "We have to cross," Daniel said, studying it. "It's the fastest way to the border." Lyra hesitated. "What if it breaks?" He looked at her with steady eyes. "Then we'll cross together. Step by step. Trust me." She took a deep breath, holding onto his hand. They moved slowly, each step measured. The bridge creaked, groaned, and shifted beneath them, but Daniel never faltered. When one plank snapped, he caught her instantly, his strong arms holding her close. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and reassuring, even as fear gripped her own chest. That night, they made camp in a hidden grove. Lyra watched Daniel tend his wounds, bloodied and tired, yet refusing to rest fully. "You're hurting yourself," she said softly. "I can handle it," he replied. "The important thing is that you stay safe." She shook her head. "I can't believe a human, a soldier, would do all this for me. For an alien. For me." Daniel looked at her, his gaze calm but intense. "Because you matter. To me." Her chest tightened. The words were simple, yet they carried weight she had never expected. A human warrior, far from his home, risking everything, and yet he valued her life above his own. They sat together under the stars, silent but connected. Lyra reached out, brushing her hand against his. He didn't pull away. Instead, he nodded gently. That small gesture said more than words ever could, that she was not alone, that she could trust him with her life. And as the cold wind whispered through the trees, they both understood something unspoken. Their journey was dangerous. Their enemies were relentless. Yet together, they had a chance not just at survival, but at something stronger, hope. The border was still far away, but with each step, each act of courage, Daniel and Lyra were forging a bond that neither war nor distance could break. And in that quiet, dark night, two different worlds began to feel a little closer, united by trust, courage, and an unspoken promise. They would not fail each other. The air grew thinner as Daniel and Lyra climbed the last ridges before the border of the Zirith Empire. The landscape was harsh and unforgiving, filled with jagged rocks and deep crevices. Each step required focus, every breath was heavy, and yet Daniel refused to slow down. Lyra, leaning on his shoulder, could feel the strain in his body. His legs still throbbed from earlier wounds, and his arms ached from carrying her, but he moved forward without complaint. "Daniel," Lyra said softly, fear in her voice, "you don't have to push yourself so hard. We can find another path." Daniel shook his head. "No, this is the fastest way. Every hour counts. The rebels are still out there. We can't afford to waste time." She looked up at him, violet eyes wide with admiration and worry. "You keep risking yourself for me. You don't even know me properly. Why do you care so much?" He paused, brushing dust from his armor. "Because someone has to do what's right. And because I promised." I will keep you safe, Lyra. That's all that matters. Her chest tightened. She had never heard such words before. Her empire was filled with politics, fear, and strategy. Loyalty was often bought with gold or power. And yet, this human so far from home, so far from any obligation, risked everything for her. A strange warmth bloomed in her heart. Something she had never felt: trust, hope, and a growing admiration she didn't dare name. As they moved forward, the distant sounds of engines and mechanical whirring reached their ears. Rebel patrols. Drones scanned the terrain relentlessly, their sensors sweeping across the ridges. Daniel quickly pulled Lyra behind a jagged rock, his rifle ready. "Stay low," he whispered. "We can't be seen." They waited, silent and tense, while the drones passed close enough that Lyra could feel the heat of their engines. She trembled in his arms, not from the cold, but from fear. Daniel placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. Breathe. We'll get through this." Step by careful step, they moved past the patrols, keeping to shadows and narrow paths. Every noise, every movement, made Lyra's heart race, but Daniel's calm presence steadied her. She realized that bravery wasn't the absence of fear. It was moving forward despite it. As evening fell, they reached a small plateau overlooking the border cliffs. On the other side, the loyalist Zereth guards stood tall and alert. Lyra gasped. "They're here. My people." Daniel scanned the horizon. "Yes, we made it. But it's not over. The rebels could still be nearby, and my own people might not understand why I'm carrying you." She stepped closer, pressing her hand to his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Daniel, you've done so much already. I don't know how to thank you." He looked down at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "You don't have to. Just stay alive. That's enough." Her heart tightened again. There was a quiet power in him, a strength that had nothing to do with weapons or warships. It was the courage to care, to protect, to fight for someone else even when the odds were against him. She had never met anyone like him. Suddenly, a drone hovered above the cliffs, scanning the area. Daniel acted instinctively, stepping in front of Lyra. "Get behind me," he shouted. Lyra's eyes widened in terror. "Daniel, you can't." But he didn't wait. He fired with precision, bringing the drone down before it could raise an alarm. The noise drew attention, and a group of rebel scouts appeared at the edge of the plateau. Daniel's eyes darkened. "Lyra, stay close. Don't move." The next few minutes were a blur. Daniel fought with skill and determination, his rifle steady despite his injuries. Lyra ducked behind him, watching the human she had begun to trust and admire risk everything without hesitation. When the last scout fell, silence returned, broken only by their heavy breathing. Daniel leaned against a rock, exhausted. Lyra knelt beside him, brushing blood and dirt from his face. "You can't keep doing this to yourself," she said softly, tears brimming in her eyes. He shook his head weakly. "I can. You're almost home. That's all I care about." She pressed her forehead against his, whispering, "You're not just a soldier. You're something extraordinary. Brave, kind, human. I will never forget this." He smiled faintly, his hand brushing hers. "Then I've done my job. That's enough for me." As the stars began to shine above the cliffs, they rested briefly, knowing the border and safety was only a few steps away. And in that quiet night, Lyra realized the truth. This human warrior had given her more than protection. He had given her trust, hope, and the courage to believe that even in a galaxy at war, kindness and bravery could change everything. Together, they would step into the next chapter. And nothing, not war, not enemies, not fear, would break the bond that had grown between them. The border cliffs of the Zereth Empire finally appeared on the horizon, bathed in the soft glow of a rising sun. Loyalist guards stood in perfect formation, their banners fluttering in the morning wind. Lyra's heart raced at the sight of her people, safe and waiting. But relief was fleeting. Above them, the whine of mechanical engines pierced the air. Human strike drones were closing in fast, their weapons locked onto the princess. Daniel felt the surge of adrenaline he'd been fighting off for days. He positioned himself in front of Lyra without a moment's hesitation. "Stay behind me," he commanded, voice steady even as his body screamed in pain. "No. You can't face them alone." Lyra cried, panic rising in her chest. "I can. I will." His eyes met hers with a determination so fierce it stole her breath. "If someone dies today, it won't be you." The drones opened fire. Blinding flashes and loud explosions surrounded them, and Daniel reacted instantly. Bullets tore through the air, sparks flying from metal and stone as he returned fire. Each movement was calculated, precise, despite the bleeding cuts on his arms and the exhaustion etched across his face. He was a human, yes, but in that moment, he was something more, a force of courage and will that refused to yield. Lyra pressed herself against his back, feeling his strength and steadiness. Every instinct told her to run, but she stayed, her trust in him unshakable. She could feel his heartbeat beneath her hands, steady and unwavering. Even as fear clawed at her, she realized something extraordinary. This human would not let her die. No matter what, the battle raged. Daniel took hit after hit, shielding Lyra with his body, yet he never faltered. Sparks from damaged drones lit his face in the early morning light. Lyra screamed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Daniel, please don't die." He looked at her over his shoulder, eyes filled with a mixture of pain and resolve. I promised you'd get home. That promise means more than anything." Just when it seemed they could be overwhelmed, the loyalist Zirith guards arrived, blasting the drones from the sky with plasma rifles and missiles. One by one, the machines fell, crashing into the cliffs and sending clouds of dust into the air. Silence followed, broken only by the echo of the last explosions. Daniel sank to his knees, bloodied, battered, but alive. Lyra rushed to him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders, pressing his face to her chest. "You're alive. Thank the stars you're alive," she whispered, her voice shaking. He coughed, weakly smiling. You're home now," he said, voice barely audible. Lyra shook her head, tears running freely. "No, Daniel. You brought me home. You fought. You risked everything for me. Her voice faltered, choked by emotion. "I don't know how to repay you." He grinned faintly, pain etched on his face. "You don't have to. Just live. That's enough." Then, a ripple of awe passed through the crowd. The Empress herself descended from the loyalist ranks, her silver robes glimmering in the morning sun. Her eyes locked on the human kneeling in front of her daughter, bloodied but proud. The assembly fell silent, watching the extraordinary scene unfold. "Who is this human?" the Empress demanded, voice regal and full of authority. Lyra stepped forward, trembling but determined. "Mother, he is the one who saved me. He carried me across battlefields, through danger and death, to bring me home. He risked everything for me." The Empress studied Daniel, her piercing gaze softening. Then, in an act no one expected, she knelt beside him. "Human warrior. Your courage, your loyalty, your bravery. It binds our worlds. You are welcome in the Zirith Empire." Daniel blinked, weak but astonished. I only kept a promise," he said softly. "You kept more than a promise," the Empress replied. "You prove that honor and courage are universal. You belong here, and you will live by my command." Medical teams rushed to Daniel, lifting him gently into a healing pod. Lyra stayed close, holding his hand, unwilling to let go. "Please, don't leave me," she whispered, voice trembling. He squeezed her hand weakly. I won't. I promised. I always keep my promises." As the pod sealed and healing energy began to repair his wounds, Lyra watched him, tears of relief and gratitude streaming down her face. For the first time in years, the galaxy felt safe, not because the war was over, but because one human warrior had shown that courage, kindness, and loyalty could transcend worlds, species, and fear. She leaned close, whispering again. "You brought me home, Daniel, and now, I will never leave your side." Outside, the rising sun cast light on the cliff edges. Smoke from the destroyed drones drifted into the sky. A new day had begun, one of hope, peace, and the promise of a bond that would not be broken. One human. One alien princess. One story of courage that changed everything.